Christian Vaughan stood in the doorway of his kitchen, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. His mouth was open in shock, and for a moment, he genuinely thought he might faint. His 4 identical 3-year-old quadruplet sons, Mason, Logan, Parker, and Tyler, were standing at the kitchen counter, each wearing a tiny apron. Their hands were plunged into flour, their faces covered in white powder, and they were laughing with pure, unbridled joy. And standing behind them, patiently guiding their small hands, was his housekeeper, Nina Petrova, wearing her blue work uniform covered in flour handprints. She was teaching them to make bread. "My God! What is this?" Christian whispered. Nina looked up, startled, and her face immediately showed concern. "Mr. Vaughan, you're home early." "I'm so sorry, I can explain." But Christian wasn't upset. He was overwhelmed, because in the year and a half since his wife had died, he'd never seen his sons this happy, never seen them this engaged, never heard them laugh like this. Christian was 37 years old, a hedge fund manager who'd made his fortune through aggressive investments and calculated risks. He lived in a pristine modern home with every luxury imaginable, and after his wife Miranda had died from postpartum complications following the difficult birth of their quadruplets, he'd hired the best help money could buy. Multiple nannies, housekeepers, tutors, specialists, an entire staff to care for 4 energetic, identical toddlers who Christian had loved desperately but never quite known how to parent alone. Nina had been his housekeeper for 6 months, hired through an exclusive agency. She was 52, originally from Bulgaria, and had worked in domestic service for wealthy families for over 2 decades. She cleaned, did laundry, managed household supplies, and occasionally helped the rotating cast of nannies with basic childcare when needed. But she wasn't supposed to be teaching his sons to bake bread. That wasn't in her job description, and Christian had been very specific about maintaining professional boundaries and structured schedules for the boys. Yet here they were, his 4 sons covered in flour, clearly having the time of their lives. Christian had come home 3 hours early because his afternoon meetings had been cancelled. He'd expected to find the house quiet, the boys either napping or doing structured educational activities with their nanny, Nina somewhere cleaning or preparing dinner. Instead, he'd walked into what looked like a flour bomb had exploded in his pristine kitchen, and his sons were creating the mess. "Mr. Vaughan, please, I know this looks very bad," Nina said, her accent thicker when she was nervous. "The nanny had a family emergency and had to leave early. She called me to watch the boys until you got home. They were getting restless, and I thought maybe I could teach them something from my childhood. My grandmother taught me to make bread when I was small. It always made me happy." She gestured to the chaotic scene. "I know your kitchen is now a disaster. I will clean everything, every surface. I will stay late if needed. Please don't be angry with the boys. This was my idea." Christian finally found his voice. "Nina, I'm not angry." She looked surprised. "You're not?" I'm shocked," Christian admitted, stepping into the kitchen. "But not angry. I've never seen them like this." Mason, the oldest by 2 minutes, noticed his father and called out, "Daddy, look, we're making bread." "Real bread," Logan added. "Miss Nina says her grandma taught her when she was little like us." Parker held up his flour-covered hands proudly. "I'm mixing." Tyler, usually the quietest of the 4, was beaming. "It's so squishy, Daddy." Christian felt his throat tighten. His sons were happy. Genuinely, absolutely happy in a way he hadn't seen in he couldn't remember how long. "Can I see what you're making?" Christian asked, moving closer. Nina looked uncertain but nodded. "We are making Bulgarian eth superscript o eth 3/4 eth middle dot nfth 1/2 eth degrees eth superscript o a sweet bread. It's traditional." The boys have been learning to knead the dough. They're doing very well. Christian watched as Nina patiently showed the boys how to push and fold the dough, her movements practiced and sure. She spoke to them gently, encouraging them, laughing when they got more flour on themselves than in the bowl. "Why bread?" Christian asked quietly. Nina glanced at him. "My grandmother always said that making bread teaches patience. You mix, you knead, you wait for it to rise. You cannot rush it. And at the end, You have something you made with your own hands that nourishes you and the people you love. She smiled at the boys. I thought maybe they would enjoy learning something that requires using their hands, their patience, their creativity. The nannies usually do educational tablets, Christian said. Learning apps. Structured lessons. Those are good too, Nina said diplomatically. But sometimes children need to touch things, feel things, create things that aren't on a screen. My grandmother raised 5 children. She was very wise about these things. Christian pulled out a stool and sat down, watching as Nina guided his sons through the process. She was endlessly patient, never getting frustrated when they spilled or made mistakes, always finding something to praise. When my grandmother taught me, Nina told the boys, I made such a mess. Flour everywhere. In my hair, on my clothes, on the floor. But she never got angry. She said, Nina, a clean kitchen means no one is learning. A messy kitchen means someone is growing. We're growing, Mason announced proudly. You are, Nina confirmed. Growing and learning and becoming little bakers. Christian sat there for 20 minutes, just watching. And he noticed things he'd never taken the time to see before. How Parker was left-handed while his brothers were right-handed. How Logan was more meticulous in his movements while Mason was enthusiastic but less precise. How Tyler hummed while he worked. How all 4 of them responded to Nina's gentle encouragement with a confidence Christian hadn't seen in them before. Finally, Nina helped the boys cover the dough with a cloth. Now we must wait, she said. The yeast needs time to make the dough rise. It will take about an hour. What do we do while we wait? Logan asked. First, we clean ourselves, Nina said, pulling out a damp cloth. Then, while the dough rests, maybe we can read a story. And then, when it's ready, we shape it and bake it. Can Daddy stay? Tyler asked. 4 pairs of identical eyes turned to Christian hopefully. I'd love to stay, Christian said, his voice rough with emotion. After the boys were cleaned up although still showing evidence of their flower adventure, Nina settled them in the living room with a book. Christian followed her back to the kitchen, where she immediately began the mammoth task of cleaning up. Let me help, Christian said. Nina looked startled. Mr. Vaughn, no, this is my job. Please, Christian said. Let me help. They worked together in silence for a few minutes, wiping down counters and sweeping flour. Finally, Christian said, Nina, can I ask you something? Of course, Mr. Vaughn. Why did you think of teaching them to bake? You're a housekeeper. You could have just put on a movie or given them tablets to play with until I got home. Nina was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Mr. Vaughn, I have worked for many wealthy families. I have seen many children. And your sons. They are good boys, sweet boys. But they are always so structured, so scheduled, so managed. Every moment planned, every activity educational, every interaction designed to optimize their development. She met his eyes. But they are still children, and children need to play, to explore, to make messes and learn by doing. When I was told to watch them today, I thought, maybe for a few hours, they can just be children. Children who bake bread with their hands and laugh when flour goes everywhere. The nannies I hire have degrees in early childhood development, Christian said. They follow research-based curricula. They're expensive and highly qualified. I'm sure they are very good at their jobs, Nina said. But Mr. Vaughn, with respect, children don't need expensive curriculum. They need love and attention and someone who is present with them, not managing them, but being with them. Christian leaned against the counter, feeling the truth of her words hit him. I've been managing them, haven't I? Not parenting them. Managing. You are doing your best, Nina said gently. You lost your wife. You are raising 4 children alone. That is not easy. You hire people to help because you must work to provide for them. There is no shame in that. But I've been treating them like a project to be optimized, Christian said. Like if I just hire the right experts and follow the right strategies, they'll turn out perfectly. And I've forgotten that they're just little boys who want to play and laugh and make messes. Nina smiled. Wanting them to have the best is not wrong, Mr. Vaughan. But sometimes the best is not the most expensive or the most expert. Sometimes the best is simple. Flour and yeast and patient hands showing them how to create something. When the bread was finally ready to be shaped and baked, Nina called the boys back to the kitchen. Christian watched as she showed them how to braid the dough, how to brush it with egg wash, how to be careful putting it in the oven. Now we wait again, she told them. 30 minutes, and we'll have fresh bread. Can we eat it with butter? Parker asked. We can eat it however you like, Nina promised. While the bread baked, filling the house with the most incredible smell, Christian gathered his sons on the couch. Did you have fun today? He asked. So much fun, Mason said. Miss Nina is the best. She knows everything about bread. Her grandma taught her, Logan added. When she was little like us. Can we make bread again? Tyler asked quietly. Yeah, Parker chimed in. Can Miss Nina teach us other things too? Christian looked over at Nina, who was cleaning the kitchen, and made a decision. Nina, can you come here for a minute? She came over, looking uncertain. The boys want to know if you can teach them other things, Christian said. And I'd like to know too. What else did your grandmother teach you? Nina smiled. Oh, many things. How to make dumplings. How to plant a garden. How to knead clay to make simple pottery. How to recognize different birds. How to make natural dyes from plants. Old skills. Simple skills. But useful skills. Would you be willing to teach my sons? Christian asked. Mr. Vaughan, I'm just the housekeeper. No. Christian interrupted gently. You're not just anything. You're someone who saw my sons as children who needed engagement and creativity, not just curriculum and structure. You're someone who shared your family traditions with them. And you're someone who made them happier in 3 hours than I've seen them in months. He took a breath. I'd like to offer you a new position, not as housekeeper, but as, I don't know what to call it, cultural educator, life skills teacher, grandmother figure. He laughed. The title doesn't matter. What matters is that I want you to spend time with my sons. Teach them the things your grandmother taught you. Give them experiences that are simple and hands-on and full of the kind of wisdom that doesn't come from expensive curricula. Nina's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Vaughan, I would be honored. But I'm not qualified. I have no degree, sir. You have something better, Christian said. You have life experience. You have traditional knowledge. And you have patience and kindness and genuine love for teaching. That's worth more than any degree. When the bread came out of the oven, golden and perfect, the boys cheered. Nina cut thick slices, still warm, and slathered them with butter. The 5 of them, Christian, his 4 sons, and Nina sat at the kitchen table together, eating bread the boys had made with their own hands. This is the best bread ever, Mason declared. That's because you made it, Nina said. Food always tastes better when you made it yourself. Christian watched his sons eat with such joy and pride, and he realized he'd been approaching fatherhood all wrong. He'd been trying to give them the best of everything, the best education, the best activities, the best development opportunities. But what they needed was simpler connection, hands-on experience, the kind of simple wisdom that gets passed down through generations. Over the following months, Nina became an integral part of the boys' lives. She taught them to garden, showing them how to plant seeds and nurture them into vegetables. She taught them to make different traditional foods from her childhood. She taught them basic sewing, showing them how to repair a torn seam. She took them on nature walks, teaching them to identify plants and birds. And Christian, inspired by Nina's approach, started spending more time simply being with his sons rather than managing their development. He cut back his work hours. He got his hands dirty in the garden with them. He learned to make bread alongside them. 6 months after that flour-covered afternoon, Christian hosted a dinner party for his colleagues. When they sat down to eat, they were served bread that Christian and his sons had made that afternoon with Nina's guidance. This is incredible, one colleague said. Where did you buy this? We didn't buy it, Christian said proudly. My sons made it with help from Nina, who's taught them traditional baking. He looked at his boys, who were beaming with pride. Nina taught me something important. She taught me that the best education isn't always the most expensive or the most credentialed. Sometimes it's the simple passing down of knowledge and skill from one generation to the next. It's patience and hands-on experience and the joy of creating something with your own hands. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the boys were in bed, Christian found Nina in the kitchen. "I never thanked you properly," he said, "for that day, for showing me what my sons needed." "You thank me every day," Nina said, "by being present with them, by getting flour on your own hands, by valuing the simple things." When I walked in and saw them covered in flour, making such a mess, I almost had a heart attack, Christian admitted with a laugh. "My first thought was about the mess, about the deviation from schedule, about the lack of structure." "And now?" Nina asked. "Now I know that some of the best moments are the messy ones, the unscheduled ones, the ones where we just do things together, not because they're developmentally optimal, but because they're joyful." Nina smiled. "Your wife would be proud, Mr. Vaughan. You have found your way back to your sons. That is what matters." Christian felt tears prick his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me that I was so focused on giving them every advantage that I was forgetting to give them what they actually needed. Simple connection, hands-on learning, and traditions that create memories." Years later, when the quadruplets were in elementary school, they would tell people that their favorite tradition was bread Sunday with their father and Ms. Nina. Every Sunday, they'd gather in the kitchen and make bread together, sometimes trying new recipes, sometimes returning to that first Bulgarian sweet bread that had started it all. And Christian would tell the story of the day he came home early and nearly fainted when he saw his housekeeper teaching his sons to make bread. How that moment had shattered his assumptions about what good parenting looked like. How it had shown him that sometimes the best teacher isn't the most credentialed, but the one who brings patience, tradition, and genuine love to the task. The millionaire had come home early and been shocked by what the maid was doing with his sons. Not because it was wrong, but because it was so perfectly, beautifully right too, and it was something he'd never thought to do himself. That shock had transformed their family, and Christian would spend the rest of his life grateful for the woman who taught his sons to make bread, and in doing so, taught their father how to truly be present for them.